So the next destination that we're going to look at is downtown Marshall. Downtown Marshall was actually a particular challenge when we were building the Heartland map, and I'm wondering if Doug wants to sort of rehash a little bit of sort of the challenges we had there, because when we went from State of Decay 1 to State of Decay 2, the visual fidelity of our world went up quite a bit, and there were things that we could build in State of Decay 1 that presented new challenges for us in State of Decay 2. They forced us to make some changes.
Yeah, and the density, if you played Heartland or State of Decay 1 in Marshall, is a lot more dense than the other 4 core maps in State of Decay 2. So it's just a lot of things to build and flesh out, and it's just it was especially for the timeline that we had for Heartland, to try to make that whole thing explorable. And so I think early on, I don't know if it was early on, I actually wasn't here for that part at the studio, but I know there was the choice to plague wall off a lot of those areas just to make it inaccessible. And then I think through that, kind of organically got the idea of the gauntlet and bringing down the plague walls and things like that.
Yeah, because I think it was not just like a question of sort of the time and person power resources. It was also a question of like system resources, like each explorable building with an interior, which we kind of make a commitment in this game that we try to make every interior that we can fully explorable by the player, and that can add a ton of just detail that then your machine has to be able to handle. And so it's kind of funny to me that like one of the major choices we made just about the story and the progression and the challenges of State of Decay Heartland were driven by the fact that we just had this dense downtown area that was just it was going to be a real challenge for us to make it work on just a system resource level. And so we wiped it out, filled it with plague gunk, so you didn't have a lot of explorable interiors, and that led to the gauntlet and all of the sort of the end game content that was there in Heartland.
Sometimes great art is created by unusual technological and technical circumstances. Ask Steven Spielberg sometime about why Jaws is as good as it is.
Exactly. So I'm not going to explore this right now, but you'll notice like this is another example of the discoveries that Andy was talking about earlier. That there's these places that are marked with these magnifying glasses. That mean this is not just a neat little visual feature. This little piggy tow truck. You can actually interact with that, and your characters will comment and give you a little bit more insight into what is going on in this world. I should also point out right here that we've got another one of our major bases. This is sort of the Marshall military base. This is sort of where actually, does somebody besides me want to say something about what this what the story behind this base is as it relates to Heartland and sort of the story we're telling in this map?
Well, I mean, it's the logical progression of what was going on in Marshall. The military had moved in and done what it could against the plague walls, but that didn't. After the resolution of Heartland, that didn't mean the military was done there, and so they created a forward operating base that would sustain their ongoing operations in and around Marshall, and this is the result of that.
Yeah, so we've always had this high school with the big sports field, which is really sort of evocative of the culture of the rural United States, where small towns high school sports teams are like a huge part of the identity of a place, and now that sports field has become this military base that where you can go and settle and sort of see multiple layers of the story of this world. Over here we've got the singed high school, which was another thing that was perpetually on fire in the original State of Decay.
Yes, and to answer any questions, no, you still cannot get into the high school.
Yeah. And then
we'll never have you running around in a grade or high school in State of Decay.
So over here we've got this fortified fire station, which is not a base, but it is a really memorable part of Heartland, because this is where you started the gauntlet. I'm not going to go inside. There are missions in this game that will sort of explore the history of the gauntlet and sort of give you a tour of what this place has become over time. But you can see we really wanted to recognize that there are these places in our world that players have a lot of past associations with, whether it's, the Gauntlet from Heartland, the courthouse here, which was, one of the major NPC groups that existed in the original State of Decay was based here. And so while the interior of the courthouse is not explorable, you can see, this was it was a hotbed of plague activity during Heartland, and now you can see it's also been sort of turned into a little bit of a military outpost. And this is another spot where, each of these locations, we tried to have some of our mission content sort of touch base with each of these locations and make sure that players got a chance to really sort of see highlighted some of these places they have positive memories of. I spent a lot of time at the Savini residence over here, which was a base in the original State of Decay. And of course,
it was a really interesting challenge from a narrative standpoint. How do we balance the love that we and our players have for the prior stories on this map with the needs of the players who will be new and don't know those stories? So we tried to strike that balance, right? Find opportunities to bring players to familiar locations that might have some resonance if they're old veteran players of our game. And even if they're not, they're still very visually interesting and narratively compelling for you to visit these various places. So hopefully we struck that right balance.
Yeah, one of the questions I get a lot from players, honestly, is players who played the original State of Decay 1, a lot of them considered Snyder's here to be the OP base in State of Decay 1. It was the place that a lot of them sort of finished their game. This is where they had settled, and they were like, why can't I settle in Snyder's again? It's such a familiar place. And a big part of that was, we needed to make a decision about, were we just going to go back and sort of lean entirely into nostalgia and let players sort of go back to places that were familiar, like we did with the Farmland compound? Or were we going to focus more of our energy on creating experiences that were not only exciting for, and unfamiliar and cool for new players, but also were unfamiliar and cool to our old veterans? People who, they've lived in Snyder's before, but they haven't lived in, interesting places like the Tranquility Factory, which is where I want to head next. But yeah, that was kind of a, an interesting decision that we needed to make, that, how much were we going to devote to, nostalgia, leaning into, letting players visit places they'd seen before and have new experiences there, and how much did we want to sort of surprise players and let them discover new things that they'd never seen before.
And that also goes for the developers as well, right? We're human beings. We like dabbling in the new and creating things that we haven't seen or done before. So it was much more rewarding as developers to be able to explore new areas and create new things, experiment with our base locations and some of our base technologies in ways that we had not done in previous versions of the game.
Yeah, I think that kind of came up early on when we decided not to use Jurassic Junction as a base. I think we'd even early on talked about using Jurassic Junction, but having like a nerfed version of it, and it just kind of seemed lame. So early on, we're like 6 new bases. So
exactly. So this is one of them. This is the Tranquility Factory. This is probably one of the more novel places we put in the game. One thing that I am highlighting right now, because it's gotten dark, is the fact that, we haven't just been adding new map content and new story content to the game. We've also added some new features like leaving your headlights on in your car when you get out. But real quick, we don't really want to always see the base with such harsh lighting as you get from a set of headlights. So let me really quick change up the time of day again to make it 9 o'clock in the morning.
Hey, stranger.
Boom! Look at that. Isn't that beautiful?
Want to meet up? I sure like being on the winning team.
Of course, it's still lit up by the harsh light of the car.
Yeah, that's true. Let me quickly turn that car around.
Or just turn off the lights,
Whatever. I don't actually. One thing is, I think you actually now. Yeah, no, never mind. You're right. I could have turned off the lights, but I forgot that I could. I just thought I had to turn the car around. Okay, let's head inside here real quick and just have a look. This is actually one of my favorite brand new bases that we've done. This factory was here in Heartland. I believe that this is. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is where you met Diana in the original Heartland version of this map. But a lot has changed since then. And deal with this zombie. So it feels like, you know, originally this was a very harsh industrial building, but somebody has put a lot of effort into making it beautiful. And I think that somebody may have been Brant Fitzgerald. Is that right?
So many of our bases are harsh reminders of the realities of survival. They're about walls and fences and things like that. I love the fact that Brant was able to just have fun and create a space that felt completely unique for our world.
That's exactly it, Andy. It was time. It was time to have something that wasn't just this hard Scrabble or militaristic, you know, because other people will survive and other people will have ideas about how they want to live and what they want to live around. And this one just worked out. And it started the crazy paint. We can get into this during the base stream, but yeah, I really like this base. It was a lot of fun to work on.
Yeah, and I love the fact that, you know, there were a smattering, like we pointed out the pterodactyl. There were a smattering of like little physics toys in the original State of Decay that, you know, State of Decay 2 didn't lean quite as hard into, but we do have these yoga balls. So if anybody wants to see how far they can get one of these yoga balls, I would love to see what they're capable of doing, in, you know, if they want to make videos of their own.